In the bustling streets of Manila, capital of the Philippines, an elderly man named Ernesto Malacañang walked with difficulty, leaning on an improvised bamboo cane. At 75 years old, his curved body carried the marks of a life dedicated to boxing, not as a fighter, but as the caretaker of the legendary Ilord Gym, where many Filipino champions took their first steps in the world of pugilism. Sweat ran down his wrinkled forehead as he tried to shelter from the scorching sun that punished the city on that summer afternoon. Ernesto had worked at the gym for more than 4 decades, cleaning the sweat from the ring, fixing equipment, and occasionally offering words of wisdom to young fighters. Among these youngsters was a skinny boy from General Santos City, who always arrived before everyone else and left after the lights went out. Ernesto remembered how this boy, with determined eyes and fast hands, would humbly thank him when he left the lights on longer so he could train for a few extra rounds. The old Filipino now lived in a small room at the back of a grocery store belonging to his niece, Marisa Duterte. With his miserable pension barely covering medication for arthritis and heart problems, Ernesto helped as he could in the store, organizing shelves and doing small services. His dignity remained intact despite financial difficulties and deteriorating health. He never complained, carrying with him only memories of a time when boxing was his life and the gym his home. That afternoon, passing by an electronics store, Ernesto stopped to watch the televisions in the window. On all of them, the face of Manny Pacquiao, now a middle-aged man, appeared in an advertisement about his latest philanthropic initiative. The old caretaker smiled, remembering the boy he used to help decades ago. How quickly time had passed, transforming that determined young man into a national legend, a global icon, and a man who never forgot his humble roots. With a melancholic sigh, Ernesto continued on his way, unaware that the winds of destiny were about to change the course of his life in ways he could never imagine. What the old Filipino didn't know was that his name had been mentioned in a recent interview, when Pacquiao was asked about people who had influenced him at the beginning of his career. The champion had talked about a kind caretaker who always kept the gym clean and the lights on for him, even after closing time. In a luxurious residence in Forbes Park, Manila's most exclusive neighborhood, Manny Pacquiao contemplated the city's horizon through the large windows of his office. Despite all the wealth and achievements accumulated over the years, his heart remained anchored in memories of his poor childhood in General Santos City, where each meal was a blessing and each pair of boxing gloves a precious treasure. In recent days, a restless feeling had accompanied him, as if something important was incomplete in his journey. Jomar Rizal, his personal assistant for more than 15 years, entered the office silently, bringing a folder with documents related to Pacquiao's charitable foundation. Among the papers was a list of former employees of the Ilord Gym, compiled after the nostalgic mention the champion had made during the interview. The name of Ernesto Malacañang was highlighted, along with a brief description. Caretaker, from 1975 to 2017, currently retired, precarious financial situation. Manny's eyes lit up reading that name. Memories flooded his mind. The early mornings training alone in the ring, the smell of sweat and disinfectant, and the old caretaker who always offered an encouraging smile and, occasionally, a banana or a sandwich when he noticed the young fighter hadn't eaten enough that day. Ernesto never asked for anything in return, just did his job with dignity and kindness. A resolute determination took hold of Pacquiao. He instructed Jomar to locate Ernesto immediately and arrange a meeting, but not as the world celebrity he was today. He wanted to meet his old friend as the young boxer he once was, without cameras or publicity. This would be a personal moment, an opportunity to thank someone who unknowingly had been a fundamental part of his journey. While Jomar made the necessary calls, Manny reflected on how unpredictable life was. From a hungry boy selling cigarettes on the streets of General Santos City to a global boxing icon, his trajectory had been extraordinary. However, he knew that each achievement was the result not only of his talent and determination, but also of small kindnesses received along the way from people like Ernesto, whose names rarely appeared in headlines. In the small grocery store in The Tondo neighborhood, one of the poorest areas of Manila. Ernesto was organizing rice packages when the store phone rang. His niece Marissa answered, her expression gradually transforming from curiosity to disbelief. After hanging up, she approached, her uncle with hesitant steps, as if fearing her words might not be true. Someone important wanted to meet him, someone from his past. Ernesto listened with skepticism, imagining it could be some kind of mistake or worse, a scam targeting his scarce retirement money. Sunday morning dawned with an unusual lightness in the Manila air. Ernesto had reluctantly agreed to the mysterious meeting, more to calm Marissa's insistence than believing that someone really important would remember him. Wearing his only good shirt, kept for special occasions, the elderly man fixed his thinning hair in the small cracked mirror in his room. His trembling hands reflected both his advanced age and nervousness about the unexpected situation. On the other side of the city, Manny Pacquiao prepared with a simplicity that surprised even Jomar. He wore a simple t-shirt, jeans and sneakers, dispensing with the expensive watches and accessories he normally used in public appearances. His wife, Jinky Jamora, watched with an understanding smile. After so many years together, she knew her husband's heart well and how he valued these moments of reconnection with his roots. Jomar drove an ordinary car, without logos or features that might attract attention, following the congested streets of Manila towards the Tondo neighborhood. Manny observed through the window the transformations of the city he loved so much, reflecting on how, despite economic development, inequality still deeply marked Filipino society. That's why his foundation worked tirelessly to create opportunities for young people from poor communities, especially through sports. At the small grocery store, Ernesto sat on a wooden bench at the entrance, watching the street's movement. Children played improvised basketball on a hoop without a net, while street vendors announced their products with melodic shouts. It was a Sunday like any other in Tondo, except for the fact that, according to the mysterious call, someone important would come to see him. When a discreet car parked in front of the grocery store, Ernesto barely raised his eyes, accustomed to the constant movement of vehicles in the area. It was only when the door opened and a familiar figure emerged that his heart seemed to leap in his chest. Time seemed to freeze as his aged eyes tried to process the image before him. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. Manny Pacquiao, the pride of the Philippines, the world champion of 8 different categories, was there, walking towards him with the same humble smile he displayed when he was just a dreamy boy at the Alorda gym. Upon recognizing the caretaker, Manny quickened his pace, his expression lighting up with genuine joy. Ernesto tried to stand up quickly, an automatic gesture of respect, but his weak legs faltered under the weight of emotion. Before he could fall, he felt strong hands supporting him. The same hands that had conquered the boxing world now sustained him with gentleness. No words were necessary in that first moment. The hug that followed transcended any dialogue, communicating decades of gratitude, respect, and a human connection that neither time nor fame had managed to erase. Marissa watched the scene from the grocery store door, silent tears running down her face. She had never imagined that her uncle, a simple man who had dedicated his life to hard work, would be embraced by a national legend in front of her small store. Neighbors began to notice the illustrious presence, forming small groups, murmuring in tones of reverence and surprise. The small room behind the grocery store had been quickly transformed by Marissa. The plastic table, normally covered with bills to pay and inventory lists, now sported a lace tablecloth kept for special occasions and the best cups in the house. Ernesto and Manny sat face to face, while Jomar remained discreetly at the entrance, ensuring no one interrupted this very personal moment. Ernesto's eyes, blurred by age and emotion, studied the face of the man before him, seeking traces of the boy he had known decades ago. Despite the natural marks of time, Manny's smile remained the same, genuine, humble, illuminating his entire countenance. The champion explained how he had never forgotten the caretaker's small kindnesses. The lights kept on after hours, the ring always clean in the early morning hours, the words of encouragement whispered when no one else believed in the dream of a poor boy from General Santos City. With slightly trembling hands, Ernesto served the hot tea Marissa had prepared. He told about his life after retirement, without self-pity or lamentations, just stating the facts with the same dignity with which he had always conducted his existence. He spoke about his health problems, how he helped at his niece's grocery store to feel useful, about the expensive medicines he sometimes had to stop buying to help with household expenses. While listening attentively, Manny observed the modest environment, the peeling walls, the ceiling with water stains, the few pieces of furniture worn by time. A lifetime of honest work had resulted in an old age of scarcity and difficulties. The contrast with his own reality could not be more striking, and a sense of injustice invaded him. It wasn't right that someone who had given so much received so little in return. The conversation flowed naturally, revisiting memories of the Hiloti gym, of the great fighters who passed through there, of the transformations in Filipino boxing over the years. Ernesto mentioned other promising young men who trained under his watchful eye, but admitted that none had demonstrated Manny's fierce determination. He always knew, he confided with a gleam of pride in his eyes, that skinny boy would go. Far outside, news of Pacquiao's presence had spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. A small crowd was forming on the street, kept at a respectful distance by Jomar and some of Marissa's closest neighbors. Cell phones recorded the scene, and children squeezed to get a glimpse of their hero. Manny was accustomed to this reaction, wherever he went, but today his focus was entirely on the man before him. After almost 2 hours of conversation, Manny finally revealed the true purpose of his visit. It wasn't just a nostalgic gesture or a courtesy visit. He had made an important decision and wanted to communicate it personally. Ernesto Malacanang would no longer need to worry about money for medicine or the weight of being a burden to his niece. The Pacquiao Foundation had created a special program for former Filipino boxing workers, and Ernesto would be the first beneficiary. Ernesto's expression oscillated between disbelief and emotion as Manny explained the program's details. It wasn't just about charity or a one-time donation, but a formal recognition of the contribution of people like him to the development of boxing in the Philippines. The program included a generous monthly pension, a complete health plan, and dignified housing in a condominium specially built for sports veterans. Ernesto's wrinkled hands trembled on the table. Throughout his life, he had taken pride in his independence, in never needing others' pity. He hesitated, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension in his tired gaze. Sensing his discomfort, Manny clarified that he wasn't offering alms, but paying a debt of honor. How many times had Ernesto extended his hand to help him without ever asking for or expecting retribution? Now it was his turn to give back. Marissa, who observed the scene from the small adjacent kitchen, couldn't contain her tears. She knew her uncle's pride well, but she also knew about the nights when she heard him coughing incessantly because he couldn't buy the necessary medication. She saw the weight of years on his curved shoulders, the growing difficulty in performing simple tasks. Pacquiao's offer wasn't just a gift for Ernesto, but a blessing for the entire family. While they discussed practical details, Jomar entered discreetly, informing that the crowd outside had grown considerably. Residents from neighboring areas were beginning to arrive, attracted by rumors of the national idol's presence. Some reporters were already positioned on the street, and social media was buzzing with posts about Pacquiao's surprise visit to Tondo. What had begun as a private meeting now risked becoming a media event. Manny reflected for a moment, weighing his options. Although he preferred to keep the meeting away from the spotlight, he recognized the opportunity to give visibility to the Foundation's new program. With Ernesto's consent, he decided to make a brief statement. It wasn't about self-promotion, but inspiring other athletes and successful people to look at those who were left behind, the invisible workers who made the success of many possible. Outside the grocery store, under Manila's scorching sun, Manny Pacquiao and Ernesto Malacanang emerged side by side. The crowd erupted in applause and shouts of enthusiasm. Cell phone cameras rose in unison to capture the moment. With his arm firmly around the elderly man's shoulders, Manny briefly explained who Ernesto was and the fundamental role he had played not only in his career, but in the lives of countless young Filipino boxers over 4 decades. With a voice choked with emotion, he announced the recognition program for Filipino boxing veterans, an initiative of the Pacquiao Foundation to ensure dignity and comfort to those who dedicated their lives to the sport but remained in the shadows. Ernesto would be the first honoree, but many others would be identified and benefited in the coming months. The program would be financed not only by the foundation, but also by donations from companies and other successful athletes who wanted to give back to the sport that projected them. The crowd applauded enthusiastically, many with tears in their eyes. In the Philippines, where boxing transcends the status of sport to become almost a religion, the initiative deeply touched hearts. In a country marked by extreme socio-economic contrasts, the gesture symbolized a bridge between worlds that rarely meet, that of millionaire celebrities and that of anonymous workers. In the weeks following the meeting in Tondo, Ernesto Malacañang's life completely transformed. The story of the old caretaker and his connection with the legendary champion captured the imagination of the Filipino people, becoming a viral phenomenon on social media and the subject of special reports in the country's main media outlets. From an anonymous retired worker, Ernesto had become a symbol of all those who, behind the scenes, build the foundations for others' success. The condominium. Promised by Pacquiao, named Bayani ng Boxing, Boxing Heroes, was completed in record time in the Quezon City region, a modern complex, specially adapted for the elderly, with communal areas, permanent medical assistance and recreational activities. The apartment designated for Ernesto, a spacious 2-bedroom with a view of a tropical garden, had been decorated with historical photographs of Filipino boxing, including several from the Alordi gym in its glory years. Moving was an exciting event. Volunteers from the Pacquiao Foundation, along with Marissa and her children, helped transport Ernesto's few belongings. Among them, a carefully preserved wooden box containing newspaper clippings about the great moments of Filipino boxing, many, highlighting Manny's achievements. The old caretaker had followed each step of the meteoric career of the boy he had met decades ago, cutting and saving each press mention as a personal treasure. On the day of the condominium's official inauguration, sports personalities, politicians, and celebrities attended to honor the initiative. Manny insisted that Ernesto occupy the place of honor at his side, treating him not as a beneficiary, but as a special guest and inspiration for the project. Wearing a new suit, a gift from Pacquiao, the elderly man seemed transformed. His posture, previously curved by the weight of years and difficulties, now displayed a renewed dignity. During the ceremony, other Filipino boxing veterans were introduced, retired trainers, cutmen, referees, and administrative staff who had dedicated decades to the sport without ever receiving the deserved recognition. Each of them would receive housing and assistance similar to Ernesto's. The project had grown exponentially after the initial repercussion, with various companies offering sponsorship and other famous athletes committing to contribute financially. The international press also reported on the initiative, highlighting it as an example to be followed in other countries. In a world where athletes often forgot their origins after reaching stardom, Pacquiao's attitude represented an inspiring counterpoint. Corporate social responsibility experts cited the program as a model of how celebrities and corporations could create significant social impact through well-structured projects. For Ernesto, however, the greatest gift wasn't the luxurious apartment or financial security, but the feeling of belonging and renewed purpose. In the condominium, a small Filipino boxing memory room had been organized, where he had voluntarily assumed the role of curator and guide. Several times a week, schools brought students to learn about the history of the national sport through the eyes of those who had experienced it behind the scenes. The old caretaker, with his encyclopedic knowledge and fascinating stories, had become the main attraction. During one of these school visits, a skinny boy of approximately 12 years caught Ernesto's attention. Quiet and observant, the boy, named Rodrigo Aquino, asked surprisingly insightful questions about boxing techniques and the mentality needed to be a champion. After the visit, he approached timidly, confessing his dream of becoming a boxer, but lamenting the lack of resources to train adequately. Something in the boy's silent determination reminded Ernesto of the young Manny from decades ago. The Filipino winter brought torrential rains that transformed Manila's streets into temporary streams. Inside his comfortable apartment at the Bayani, ng boxing condominium, Ernesto watched the raindrops run down the window while waiting for a special visit. His health had improved significantly in recent months, thanks to access to adequate medical care and the tranquility of his new life. Arthritis still bothered him on humid days like that one, but modern treatments considerably alleviated the discomfort. In the condominium's community center, a small boxing gym had been installed under the technical guidance of Pacquiao's team. Initially thought of as a therapeutic space for veterans, it soon transformed into a broader social project, opening its doors to talented young people from poor communities. Among these youngsters was Rodrigo, the boy Ernesto had met during a school visit. After talking with the boy and meeting his family, a single mother working as a domestic maid and 3 younger siblings, the old caretaker decided to become his informal mentor. With the approval of the Pacquiao Foundation, Rodrigo had received a full scholarship to train at the gym, including equipment, proper nutrition, and school monitoring. Ernesto, despite his advanced age, had assumed the role of counselor, transmitting to the boy not only technical knowledge about boxing, but mainly lessons about discipline, perseverance, and humility. The same qualities he had identified in Manny decades ago. The doorbell rang, interrupting his reflections. Upon opening the door, Ernesto found himself facing a soaked but smiling Rodrigo, holding a small package wrapped in newspaper. The boy explained that he had walked for 40 minutes, in the rain, as the bus money had been used to buy a special gift for his mentor. Moved, Ernesto invited him in, providing dry towels and a change of clothes he kept in the apartment for occasions like that. While Rodrigo changed, Ernesto prepared hot chocolate in the small kitchen equipped with modern appliances that still surprised him with their practicality. The apartment, although modest by luxury standards, represented a palace compared to the room at the back of the grocery store where he had previously lived. On the walls, besides the historical photographs of Filipino boxing, there were now also recent images, Ernesto with other sport veterans, with students from the gym, and in a place of honor, next to Manny Pacquiao on the day of the condominium's inauguration. Settled in the small living room, mentor and pupil talked about progress in training. Rodrigo showed natural talent, but more important than that, he demonstrated the same tireless work ethic that characterized great champions. He trained more than everyone, arrived earlier, left later, absorbed each instruction with respectful attention. The professional trainers had already noticed his potential, commenting that in a few months he would be ready for amateur competitions. Finally, with a mixture of shyness and pride, the boy handed over the package he had brought. Upon unwrapping the gift, Ernesto found a small golden plastic trophy, the kind sold in stores for party supplies. On the base, an inscription handwritten with permanent marker. For Tatay Ernesto, the true champion. Tatay, a Tagalog word for father, reflected the bond that had formed between them. The old caretaker felt his eyes water, unable to express in words how much that simple gesture touched him. That same afternoon, Jomar Rizal, Pacquiao's personal assistant, made a surprise visit to the condominium. He brought exciting news. Manny was organizing a large charity celebration for the first anniversary of the Filipino Boxing Veterans Recognition Program, which would happen the following month. The event would be held at the luxurious Manila Hotel, with coverage from national and international press. Ernesto would be honored as a symbol of the program and should prepare a short speech for the occasion. The prospect of speaking in public to an audience of celebrities and authorities terrified the elderly man. Throughout his life, he had worked behind the scenes, comfortable with his supporting role. Jomar tried to reassure him, explaining that Manny wanted precisely to give voice to those who had always remained silent, allowing their stories to inspire other people. Before leaving, he gave Ernesto a state-of-the-art cell phone, a gift from Pacquiao so they could communicate more easily about the event preparations. The banquet hall of the Manila Hotel was elegantly decorated for the celebration of the first anniversary of the Filipino Boxing Veterans Recognition Program. In the wings, Ernesto Malacañang nervously adjusted the bow tie of his new tuxedo, with Marissa and young Rodrigo by his side, equally anxious for the important moment that approached. When Manny Pacquiao took the stage and called Ernesto, the old caretaker walked slowly towards him, being received with a warm embrace that momentarily erased the social distances between them. With a voice initially hesitant, but which soon gained firmness, Ernesto shared his story at the Alord gym and the young Manny he had known, impressing everyone with the dignity with which he spoke of his life of hard work, without resentment, for the previous lack of recognition. In a touching moment, Ernesto called Rodrigo to the stage, presenting him as his student and as a symbol of continuity, while Manny announced the Ernesto Malacañang Educational Scholarship Fund, destined to guarantee higher education to talented young athletes. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Businessmen and important figures approached the veterans with genuine respect, and donations were announced to ensure the continuity and expansion of the programs. In the following weeks, the story of Ernesto and Manny gained notoriety in the Filipino media, but for the old caretaker, the greatest reward was in the opportunity to transmit his knowledge to the new generation, reflecting that his legacy wasn't in personal achievements, but in the difference he had made in others' lives. In a later interview, when asked what he considered his greatest legacy for the Philippines, the champion simply replied, "World titles will eventually be broken, but the difference we make in people's lives remains forever." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.